Respect it. If you've ever felt like you were given your heart, your time, your energy, and somehow still ended up feeling unseen, unappreciated, or replaceable, then tonight this message is for you. Because the truth is, sometimes it's not that you're not valuable, it's that certain behaviors quietly erase your value right in front of a man, and you don't even realize it until it's too late. You see, there's something Steve Harvey often talks about. Value is not something you beg for, it's something you demonstrate. And the painful part is many people lose their value not because they lack worth, but because they unknowingly give it away. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman who loved deeply. She was kind, supportive, always there. She answered every call, replied to every message instantly, rearranged her life just to fit someone else into it. She thought this was love. She thought this was how you prove you care. But over time, something changed. The man she cared about started pulling away. He stopped trying. He stopped showing up the same way. And one day she asked herself the question that so many people ask in silence, what did I do wrong? The answer wasn't simple, but it was real. The first thing that quietly kills your value in front of a man is overgiving without boundaries. When you give too much too soon without requiring effort in return, you unintentionally teach someone that you will always be there no matter what they do. And when something becomes guaranteed, it stops being appreciated. Think about it. Human nature doesn't chase what it already owns without effort. It values what it has to earn. When you're always available, always sacrificing, always putting yourself second, you might think you're showing love. But what you're actually showing is that your time, your energy, your presence has no limit. And when there's no limit, there's no respect. Real value comes with standards. It comes with knowing when to say, I can't talk right now without feeling guilty. It comes from not dropping everything the moment someone calls. It comes from having a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's attention. Because here's the truth that hits hard. People respect what they can lose. If someone feels like they can never lose you, they stop fighting to keep you. And this isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation. It's about balance. It's about understanding that love is not about losing yourself. It's about bringing your full self into something that is mutual. Let me take you deeper. Imagine a man meets two women. One is constantly available, always texting first, always adjusting, always giving. The other is kind, warm, but also grounded. She has her own life, her own rhythm. She doesn't chase, she responds. She doesn't overextend, she engages with intention. Who do you think he values more over time? Not because one is better, but because one understands her worth. And worth is not declared with words. It is demonstrated through behavior. The moment you start abandoning your own needs just to keep someone interested, you slowly erase the very thing that made you attractive in the first place. Your independence, your confidence, your sense of self. And here's the part nobody tells you. When you overgive, you don't create closeness. You create imbalance. And imbalance leads to disconnection. Because love thrives in mutual effort, not one-sided sacrifice. So if you've ever felt like you were giving everything and getting less in return, don't rush to blame yourself. But do take a moment to reflect. Where did you stop choosing yourself? Where did you start saying yes when your heart was asking you to pause? Where did you begin believing that giving more would make someone love you more? Because it doesn't. Love is not built on how much you give. It's built on how equally both people show up. And the moment you understand that, you begin to reclaim your value. You start to realize that you don't have to overextend to be loved. You don't have to prove your worth by exhausting yourself. You don't have to earn attention by sacrificing your peace. You are already enough, but only if you treat yourself like you are. And that's where everything begins to change. Because when you respect your own time, others start respecting it too. When you protect your energy, others learn they must approach you with intention. When you stop overgiving, you create space for someone else to step up, and the right person will. Not because you begged them to, but because your presence feels valuable enough to earn. So tonight, I want you to sit with this thought, not with guilt, not with regret, but with awareness. Because awareness is where growth begins. And growth is how you become the person who is not just loved, but respected, valued, and never taken for granted. Good. Because what we're about to talk about next might feel uncomfortable, but it's necessary. There's another quiet behavior that slowly chips away at your value in front of a man, and this one hides behind emotions that feel completely valid in the moment. The second thing that kills your value is seeking constant validation. Now listen carefully, because this is deeper than just asking, do you love me or do I look good? It's about needing reassurance so often that it becomes the foundation of the connection. Let me paint this for you. There was someone who had a good heart, a pure heart, but every time there was silence, they assumed something was wrong. Every time a message took longer than usual, they felt anxious. Every time the energy shifted slightly, they needed confirmation that everything was okay. So they would ask again and again, "Are you sure you care about me? Why don't you text like before? Is something wrong with us?" And at first, the man reassured them. He answered. He comforted. He showed patience. But over time, something changed because what started as connection slowly turned into pressure. You see, when you constantly seek validation, you unintentionally communicate something powerful, not to them, but about yourself. You communicate that you don't fully believe in your own worth. And here's the hard truth. If you don't believe you're enough, no amount of reassurance from someone else will ever truly feel like enough. That's why the cycle never ends. They tell you they care, and for a moment you feel okay. But then doubt creeps back in, and you ask again and again and again, and slowly it drains the connection. Not because your feelings are wrong, but because the relationship starts to feel like it's carrying the weight of your self-worth. And no relationship can survive that pressure for long. Even Steve Harvey has said something powerful in his own way. A man is naturally drawn to bring peace into your life, not to constantly prove he's not the problem. Think about that. When someone feels like nothing they do is ever enough to reassure you, they don't feel closer to you. They start feeling like they're failing even when they're trying. And eventually, people pull away from environments where they feel like they can never win. Now, this doesn't mean you should hide your feelings. It doesn't mean you should never ask questions or express concerns. That's not what this is about. This is about where your sense of security comes from. Because when your confidence comes from within, your energy changes. You don't panic over silence. You understand that life happens. You don't overanalyze every message. You trust the connection. You don't need constant reassurance because you already feel grounded in who you are. And that kind of energy is powerful. It's calm. It's steady. It's attractive in a way that doesn't demand attention. It naturally draws it. Let me take you deeper into reality for a moment. Imagine being around someone who constantly doubts themselves, constantly questions your intentions, constantly needs you to prove something. It becomes exhausting, not because you don't care, but because the connection starts feeling like work instead of peace. Now imagine the opposite, someone who knows their worth, someone who communicates clearly but doesn't beg for reassurance, someone who trusts themselves enough to walk away if something doesn't feel right instead of clinging tighter out of fear. That person doesn't have to ask for value. They carry it. And here's what you need to understand. Value is felt more in your presence than in your words. You can say, "I'm confident" all day, but if your actions are filled with doubt, fear, and constant need for reassurance, people will respond to what they feel, not what you say. So the real question becomes, why do you feel the need for constant validation? Is it fear of losing them? Is it past experiences that left scars? Is it moments where you felt like you weren't chosen? Because those wounds are real. They matter. But they are yours to heal, not someone else's responsibility to carry. And the moment you begin healing that part of yourself, everything changes. You start showing up differently. You stop asking, "Do they value me?" And you start asking, "Do they deserve me?" That shift is everything. Because when you stop chasing reassurance, you start attracting respect. When you stop needing someone to confirm your worth, you start living in a way that proves it. And suddenly the dynamic changes. They start leaning in more. They start investing more. They start valuing your presence because it no longer feels like something they're responsible for maintaining. It feels like something they're lucky to be part of. So if you've ever found yourself needing constant reassurance, don't judge yourself. Understand yourself. And then grow beyond it. Because you deserve a connection that feels secure, not one that constantly needs to be questioned. And that security starts with you. All right, now we're getting into something that most people don't even realize they're doing, yet it quietly changes everything about how they are seen, felt, and valued. The third thing that kills your value in front of a man is losing your identity in the relationship. This one doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, subtly, almost invisibly. At first, you have your own life, your own routines, your own passions, the things that make you, the laughter with your friends, the goals you're chasing, the little habits that bring you peace. And then someone comes into your life and it feels good. It feels exciting. You want to spend more time together, talk more, share more. And that's natural. But somewhere along the way, the balance shifts. You start canceling plans just to be available. You stop doing the things you once loved because you'd rather be with them. Your world slowly begins to revolve around their presence, their schedule, their attention. And before you even realize it, you are no longer bringing your life into the relationship. You are building your life around the relationship. And that changes everything, because the very things that made you attractive in the beginning, your independence, your purpose, your energy, start fading away. And here's the hard truth. When you lose yourself, people start losing interest. Not because you're not worthy, but because the version of you they were drawn to is no longer showing up. Even Steve Harvey has shared in his own way that a man is inspired by a woman who has something going on for herself. Not just someone who is there, but someone who is becoming. Think about that. There's something deeply powerful about a person who has direction, who has purpose, who has a life that doesn't pause just because someone new walked in. That kind of person doesn't just attract attention, they maintain respect. Let me tell you about someone. There was a woman who used to wake up early, work on her dreams, take care of herself, spend time with people who mattered to her. She had a rhythm, a glow, a presence that came from within. Then she met someone and slowly everything changed. She stayed up late just to talk. She started skipping her routines. She distanced herself from friends. Her goals became later, and that later kept moving further away. At first it felt like love, but over time she started feeling empty, not because of the relationship, but because she had disconnected from herself. And the man she cared about, he felt it too. Not in words, but in energy. Because when someone loses their sense of self, they begin to rely on the relationship to feel complete. And that creates pressure. Pressure that no relationship is designed to carry. Because a healthy connection is not two halves trying to complete each other. It's two whole people choosing each other. And when you lose your identity, you stop showing up as a whole person. You show up as someone hoping the relationship fills the gaps. But here's the reality. What you abandon in yourself, no one else can restore for you. Let that sink in. If you walk away from your passions, your growth, your individuality, don't expect someone else to bring that back into your life. That responsibility is yours. And the beautiful part is, so is the power. Because the moment you reconnect with yourself, everything shifts. You start doing things that make you feel alive again. You rebuild your routines. You invest in your growth. You reconnect with your purpose. And suddenly your energy changes. You're no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing your life. And that is incredibly attractive. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're grounded in who you are. You see, when you have your own life, love becomes an addition, not a replacement. You don't need constant attention because your world is already full. You don't feel lost when they're busy because you have things that matter to you too. You don't shrink yourself to keep someone because you know the right person will meet you where you stand. And here's what happens when you live like that. You naturally become someone who is respected, someone who is valued, someone who is not easily taken for granted, because your presence feels like a choice, not a dependency. So if you've been feeling like you've lost a part of yourself in trying to hold on to someone, don't ignore that feeling. That feeling is your truth trying to wake you up. It's reminding you of who you are and who you still are underneath everything. And the good news is it's not gone. It's just waiting for you to come back. So come back to yourself. Pick up the things you once loved. Rebuild your routines. Reconnect with your purpose. Because when you find yourself again, you don't just feel better. You become someone the world and the right person sees differently. Not because you changed for them, but because you finally chose you again. All right, this last part might be the one that hits the deepest because it's the one people justify the most, defend the most, and yet it silently destroys value faster than anything else. The fourth thing that kills your value in front of a man is tolerating disrespect. Not just the loud, obvious kind, but the subtle kind. The late replies with no explanation, the broken promises, the inconsistency, the words that don't match actions, the moments where you feel confused, overlooked, or small, but you stay quiet because you don't want to ruin things. That kind of silence costs you more than you think. Let me tell you something real. Every time you accept behavior that doesn't sit right with your spirit, you send a message, not with your words, but with your tolerance. You say, this is okay, even when it's not. And over time, people don't rise above what you accept. They settle into it. Even Steve Harvey has expressed in his own way that men often treat you based on what you allow. That's not about blame. That's about awareness. Because once you become aware, you have the power to change it. There was someone who kept making excuses. He's just busy. He didn't mean it like that. He'll change that, and maybe some of that was true. But here's what was also true. They were ignoring how it made them feel. They were silencing their own voice just to keep the connection alive. But a connection that requires you to shrink is not a connection that will ever allow you to grow. Read that again, not with your eyes, but with your heart. Because the moment you start tolerating less than you deserve, you start teaching someone that your standards are negotiable. And once standards become negotiable, respect becomes optional. And when respect becomes optional, value disappears. Not instantly, but gradually. Until one day you look around and realize you're no longer being treated the way you once expected. And the painful part is it didn't happen all at once. It happened in moments you chose to ignore. Now let's be clear about something. Speaking up for yourself is not being difficult. Having standards is not being demanding. Walking away from disrespect is not losing, it's choosing yourself. Because real value is not about being liked at any cost. It's about being respected, even if it costs you someone. Let that sit with you. Because too many people hold on to connections that slowly break them just because they're afraid of being alone. But being alone is not the worst thing in the world. Being in a situation where you feel unseen, unheard, and undervalued, that's far worse. Because at least when you're alone, you have peace. But when you tolerate disrespect, you lose peace trying to keep something that's already misaligned. And here's the truth. Most people avoid the right person will not require you to lower your standards to keep them. The right person will rise to meet them. But that only happens when your standards are clear and your actions align with them. Because saying, I deserve better means nothing if your behavior says, I'll accept less. So the real shift happens when your words and actions match. When you say no and mean it. When you walk away and don't look back. When you choose your peace, even when it's uncomfortable. That's when your value becomes undeniable. Not because you demanded it, but because you lived it. And something powerful happens when you reach that place. You stop chasing clarity because you trust your instincts. You stop tolerating confusion because you recognize consistency. You stop holding on to potential because you value reality. And suddenly your entire experience changes because you're no longer hoping someone treats you right. You expect it. And anything less, you simply don't entertain. That is power. That is growth. That is self-respect in its purest form. So if there's anything I want you to take from this, it's this. Your value is not something someone else decides. It's something you demonstrate through what you accept, what you walk away from, and how you choose to live. And the moment you stop tolerating what hurts you is the moment you start attracting what honors you. Take that with you. Sit with it. Reflect on it. And most importantly, live it. Because you deserve a connection that doesn't require you to lose yourself, question your worth, or accept less than you know deep down you deserve. You deserve better, but first, you have to believe that. Then let's bring this home, not just with words, but with something you can feel long after this moment ends. Because everything we talked about, it's not just about relationships. It's about you. It's about how you see yourself, how you treat yourself, and how you allow the world to respond to you. You've seen now how value isn't lost in one big moment. It fades in small, quiet decisions. When you overgive and forget your boundaries, when you search for validation instead of building it within, when you lose yourself trying to hold on to someone else, when you tolerate what you know deep down you shouldn't. These aren't just habits, they are patterns. And patterns can be broken. That's the part people forget. You are not stuck. You are not defined by what you've allowed in the past. You are not too late to become someone who is respected, valued, and deeply appreciated. Because the moment you become aware, you gain power. Power to choose differently. Power to respond differently. Power to walk away when something doesn't align with who you are becoming. And that's what this is really about. Becoming, not chasing someone, not proving something, but becoming the version of yourself that naturally commands respect without forcing it. Even Steve Harvey has always emphasized in his own way that when you know your worth, you move differently. You don't beg for attention, you attract it. You don't compete for love, you recognize it. You don't hold on to confusion, you choose clarity. And most importantly, you don't stay where you are not valued. Let this sink into your spirit. The right person will never require you to dim your light to make them comfortable. They will never make you question your place in their life. They will never benefit from your presence while ignoring your worth. But none of that matters until you decide that you will no longer accept anything less. Because the world doesn't always give you what you deserve. It often gives you what you tolerate. So from this moment forward, choose differently. Choose to